Hello, everyone. I see screen sharing has stopped. We will start in about 3 minutes. Um, yeah, thank you very much. So this is the AppliedHE private. There we go. We have Kevin Downing joining us. Fantastic. I didn't know he was joining us. Hi, Kevin. What a wonderful surprise. Thank you for coming. I thought I was just here talking to a screen.
Yeah, I could just see you in splendid isolation, Peter, but nobody else.
Good, good. Do you want to say a few things when before we start, or
No, it's okay. I think
in a few
we have
minutes?
the schedule, so I'll follow that if that's okay with you. And welcome to everyone who's joining us.
Yeah, sure, sure. I'll just wait until the official starting time in 2 minutes, and then I'll start sharing slides and everything.
Sure, that's good. I think the rundown that I have, the schedule, is an introduction by Mandy.
Oh, there's
Uh,
no introduction. Is there? I'm not
okay,
sure.
you've changed the schedule, yeah?
I'm so sorry. I thought it was just me who had to talk to everybody because it's kind of an informal Q&A. That was the idea.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
it's really
Okay.
good that you joined. So
Okay, so if you want, I'm very happy to do a very brief introduction and
yeah, I
then
think that would be really nice. Yeah.
okay, that's good. Yeah. You let me know when you want me to start.
Yeah, yeah, sure. In 1 minute. I think we also have okay, we have Moritz, I think, logged in, and Winnie as well, from the RAB. Maybe some other members. But we can maybe also bring you in if there's Q&A and stuff going on, if you can stay this long. Good. All right. I think it's officially time to get started according to the schedule and the computer. So yes, welcome to the AppliedHE Private University Ranking Briefing. And we'll start with some words from Kevin Downing, the chair of the Ranking Advisory Board of AppliedHE. Go right ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome to everyone. I'll be very brief because Peter's going to run down through the detail. I just really want to tell you a little bit about how this came about. We were looking at either being recipients of other rankings or designing a ranking of our own. And initially, we thought it would be a fun idea and quite an interesting idea to look at a composite ranking of the world's top 3 to 5 rankings bodies. And so we eventually, in the Rankings Advisory Board, settled on 5. As you point out, there's a group of us, academics and senior administrators, who are just rankings geeks. We're interested in rankings for whatever reason. And we give our time as part of our normal academic roles to meet and to try and come up with fairer, more consistent rankings than those that currently exist, and many of them are very good, but all rankings have faults. And what we tried, the first thing we came up with was the Rankometer. It's a composite ranking of the world's 5 most influential world university rankings. Our target audience would be corporate recruiters, students and family members, prospective students, academics, of course, researchers, policymakers, and corporate R&D officers making research collaboration decisions. And I don't want to steal any more of Peter's presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Peter, who'll give you a rundown of what the Rankings Advisory Board came up with. I should tell you, we've been given a pretty free hand. Given that we're volunteering our time freely, AppliedHE has been very good in actually allowing the academics and the senior administrators on the Rankings Advisory Board have a pretty free hand in terms of what we come up with. So any criticisms are due to us and not to Peter, and feel free to address them in our direction. Okay, Peter, back to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And now let me see if the slide sharing works smoothly, and then we'll be off. All right. So welcome once again to the AppliedHE Private University Ranking ASEAN and Asia Pacific information session. And this information session is basically intended for people who will be the liaison persons to AppliedHE, supplying us with information, distributing surveys, etc., or who represent an institution that's interested in this ranking and just want to know a bit more about it, or generally any interested member of the general public. But it does get a bit technical, but that's because we are speaking directly to the people who are helping us submit data. So today I'll give you a brief introduction about our ranking, the private university ranking, the criteria, data, and submission timelines that we have. I'll speak a few words about the promotional strategy, because that's often an argument to partake in the ranking, that it's a great promotional tool. Then I'll share a little bit about our rankings and also our rating. We also have the AppliedHE Job Ready rating, which you can do at the same time. And it might also be of interest to you. So I will talk about that. And then finally, the closing. Now, I would already like to direct you to actually our website, appliedhe.org. So it's not the .com, but the .org. And this is where you can find all the information about this private ranking as well. So if you like to multitask a little bit and want to skip ahead to certain things, then have a look at appliedhe.org and all the material there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have afterwards. Now, in terms of questions, if you look at your Zoom box or something, there is a Q&A session, sorry, a Q&A module. I'll look at that. I'll also try and look at the chat, but I might miss a question in the chat. And finally, we also have a raise hand function, which is a little hand. At the Q&A, you can also raise hand and I will give you speaking rights, and you can just ask your question that way. So that's the intention for the next hour or so. The presentation will be much shorter, but hopefully we'll have some good questions and discussion. So for AppliedHE, when we, why do we design rankings or ratings or whatnot? It's essentially when we design one, we're asking ourselves, well, what makes a university a good university? And that, of course, is a terribly subjective question. It depends who you ask. Some people are concerned about jobs. Some people want online programs or on-campus programs, which are, of course, completely different things. Some people are concerned about sustainability and community knowledge or skills, lifelong learning. Many things come into this question of what makes a suitable ranking or rating. And that's why there are many rankings or ratings, because there's many answers to this question. Now, if you are the head of a university or a decision maker, or you're sitting at the table, you should essentially ask yourself, what evaluation tools fit our values? What kind of evaluation tools measure what we think is really important? And those are the ones that we would encourage you to support. And so my job today is, if you're still sitting on the fence, is to convince you that if you're a private university, you should seriously consider taking part in the AppliedHE private university ranking for ASEAN and the Asia Pacific region. Now, the AppliedHE private university ranking ASEAN was launched earlier this year in 2022. So we've already done the first year, where we ranked about 30 institutions from the ASEAN region. And this year, we're essentially expanding this ranking to the Asia Pacific. However, we will still publish an ASEAN list and then an Asia Pacific list. And actually, when we launched the ASEAN ranking last year, we had a lot of interest from non-ASEAN countries in the region who wanted to be ranked, but we held them off last year, but we're no longer holding them off this year. So you're very welcome if you're from outside the Association of Southeast Asian Nation region, anywhere in Asia Pacific, to join. And I'll give you the definition, our definition of Asia Pacific, in a moment. Now, this was the ranking table that we presented earlier this year. So the inaugural edition. As you can see, institutions from Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, not in the top 15, also Cambodia participated. So we had a very wide participation. I think if you're a watcher of this scene, some of the university names will be very familiar with you. You may have seen them in other rankings, and some may not. And I think we had about 50-50, or 40-60, where 40% of universities that participated had been internationally ranked before, and 60% had not. Oh yeah, Philippines, of course, as well. So it was a very successful exercise, and we hope to expand it this year as well. And you can, of course, go to the AppliedHE.com website to see the full results of the ASEAN ranking. Now, again, this is the Ranking Advisory Board. You just met Dr. Kevin Downing, and these are the other members of the board who, as mentioned, they advise AppliedHE about methodology, and they're independent of AppliedHE. So we execute and they design the methodology, of course, in proper discussion and consultation. Now about the more practical things, the criteria, the data, and also the timeline for participating in the ranking. The first question, and this may be essential, and I apologize if this wasn't clear before, does your university qualify to be in the AppliedHE private university ranking? Well, first of all, it needs to be accredited or licensed as a private university by your local government or authority. Now, many different countries have many different accreditation schemes, but if you're not locally recognized as a university, we will not rank you. And the second part of that is that you need to award your own bachelor and master level degrees. So if you are running some kind of franchise from a foreign university, again, we don't include you in the ranking. So offshore campuses, for example, are excluded. And on our website, there's a little bit more detail. Now, if you are in one of the ASEAN countries, and here they are, there are 10 countries, Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, you are automatically, if you're located there as a private university, you will automatically be included in the ASEAN ranking. And if you're located in ASEAN or any of the other countries in the Asia Pacific region, whether it's Japan or the Marshall Islands or Sri Lanka or Vanuatu or Kuwait, you will be in the Asia Pacific ranking. So we have a fairly broad scope of what is Asia Pacific. So if you're from one of these countries or regions, then yeah, we want to include you in this ranking. Now, I'm aware that not every country has locally accredited private universities. Yeah, if you have a question about your accreditation status, please email us. The email address will come. And we can answer that before you start the whole process of submitting data, because we wouldn't want you to submit a lot of data and then halfway through we tell you, sorry, you don't qualify. That would be terrible. So if you have doubt, not sure if you'll qualify, please contact us. Now, what do we measure? In order of importance, I suppose, for our private university ranking, and actually the methodology for the ASEAN ranking and the Asia Pacific ranking is identical. We look at teaching and learning, the largest share, then employability, research, community outreach, internationalization, and institutional reputation. And this is the weightage that we give everything. So we have 40% for teaching and learning, 15% for employability, 15% for research, 10% for community engagement, 10% for internationalization, and 10% for institutional reputation. The data we get is primarily from the following sources. So we conduct online student surveys. So every university that wants to take part in the ranking needs to run our online student survey. And they need to get a certain minimum response rate, which is also stated in the methodology. It's about 350 responses. Or if your student population is lower, it would be lower. We will basically send you a link. You need to distribute the link, and then we can collect the information. So that's very straightforward. The second source of information is bibliometrics from Google Scholar. Now, if you're a bit more familiar with rankings, most include a research component, and often they use Scopus or Web of Science databases. Now, the Google Scholar database is a much larger database, includes a lot more journals from emerging countries, also in non-English language publications. And so we think this is a more appropriate database to reference against for doing a private university ranking. And we look at the number of publications and also the number of citations per publication. And again, those details are on our website if you really want to dive into how we measure it. Then we also collect some institutional data where we verify it through interval sampling audit. So we will take a certain number of institutions, more or less random, sometimes because we're not sure what's going on, we have some reason to double check. And we may come back to you and we may ask you for extra information about your institution or the data you submitted. So if you submit certain figures, we may ask you for a calculation. How did you arrive at it? And by participating in the ranking, you also agree to participate in our interval sampling audit. New this year is we will also publish certain basic figures about your university. And that includes the number of faculty you have and the number of students and the number of international students. So we will publish that information. And this is basically to keep everybody honest, so that you don't have universities who are submitting very different data to very different agencies. So that's a way that we do that verification. So the institutional data, there is some audit and verification there, just to make sure that there is no incentive for anybody to submit the wrong data. Let's put it that way. Now, this is our ranking timeline. So currently we have, we've started the promotion and institutional data submission. So all institutional data is submitted online. Again, if you go to appliedhe.org, you will find a link to submit it online. And also exactly the checklist for the data you need to have ready to submit. So we hope that's clear. If it's not, again, please email us. And that's just started. As soon as your institution has submitted that data, relatively soon after, we will start sending you an online survey link. So you get a link from AppliedHE that you can circulate to your students. Now, it's maybe important to mention that one of the pieces of institutional data we ask for is alumni outcomes. So we notice in many countries that universities do tracer studies. This seems to be mandatory in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, or almost mandatory. It frequently occurs in Thailand and the Philippines, we've noticed, but not always. So if your institution has some kind of graduate outcome tracer study produced in the last 3 years, then you can submit that document. And we ask that you submit the full document with all the details, the descriptions, so that we can verify your employability claims. Now, if you don't have that, we can provide you with an alumni survey link, which you can then send to your alumni. But that's a less suitable tool. So if you have this alumni tracer study, and I believe many private universities these days have one, please be sure to submit that. Yeah, we will look it over and we will hopefully be able to accept it. Now, the student survey you can distribute to your students. We will send you a daily update about the responses, and those will be the raw responses. So typically about 10 to 20% of responses, there's a problem with them. So even though they've been submitted, people were just making jokes, playing around, or the email address is something wrong with it. So you need to overshoot a little bit with your response target. But we will send you daily updates, how you're doing with the response, so that you can monitor that, so you can make sure that you make the minimum response target. And that minimum response is kind of based on statistical rules with a certain confidence interval and whatnot. Again, I refer to the website because I don't know by heart the hard numbers on that, and I don't want to say it wrong. Then basically, so you have until now, until the end of December, to do all of this. Now, what is new for the 2023 year is that we will be sending out a separate survey to you, the people submitting the data, to liaison officers, to submit peer institutions. So as you might recall from my earlier slide, about 10% of the ranking criteria is the peer perception of an institution. So you will get a list of all the universities that are participating in our ranking this year, and you can nominate some of them institutions basically you've heard of, you think are high quality institutions. Half of your nominations can be from your local country and half should be foreign. And that's basically, what you do now. The internal process you have for doing those nominations, we leave up to you, but it is required for every institution to submit that nomination. And it's basically a tool for us to measure externally how well known, how respected an institution is. And you can only submit one nomination per institution for that. So that I just wanted to add in there, especially for people who've done this ranking process before. And then also in January, we'll be doing the compilation and also some of the audit. Some of the audit will be ongoing throughout the process. So if you see things that we don't understand coming in the data, we will contact you. And 9 out of 10 times that will be just an innocent error or mistake. But anyway, just know that we're looking at that. But in January, we will do more of the randomized audits as well. So you could still have a query from us in January. Then our target ranking publication dates are February and March. In February, we will produce and publish the ASEAN ranking, and then in March, the Asia Pacific ranking. So they will be published more or less back to back. And we're now looking at possibly physical launch events in those regions where the rankings are most relevant. If that's something you're interested in, please contact us. So we'd love to hear from you. Now, slightly more detailed deadlines. We started our promotional and outreach campaign, and you can already register your institutional data. The student survey period actually already opened starting from August 1st. You can receive that now. Currently, you're in the ranking information session, so that's today. Then in 15 November, actually, we will start this, we will end the registration process. And we will start the peer nomination that I just mentioned. And all that has to basically be back to us by mid-December. So these deadlines are the absolute last date that you can do it. So I highly advise you to run ahead by as many weeks as you can, get the process started as early as you can. I know that collecting student surveys can be a challenge, and alumni surveys as well. So arranging the timing well or getting the institutional backing is really important. So we give you a large window to do that collection in the hope that you can maybe just do a few tries, or that you can plan a window maybe right after exams or an open day. Then you can do the so that you have enough time for yourself to run the surveys. That's very important, and that's an important piece of advice I'd like to give. If you don't make our minimum requirement or minimum quota for surveys, we give you some demerit points, unfortunately. But I think at the same time, if an institution is focused, it's not an impossible number of responses. Now, as mentioned earlier, February 2023 is our target launch for the private university ranking ASEAN, and March is for the Asia Pacific ranking. All right. Now a little bit about our promotional strategy, or our joint promotional strategy, why we do this private university ranking, and how it can benefit your institution. Now, once the ranking is launched, there will be a few different things. There'll be the AppliedHE.com ranking microsite, where the official ranking results are, some information about the universities participating, etc. There'll be some kind of ranking launch events too, in fact, one for ASEAN, for the Asia Pacific. We're planning an AppliedHE ranking showcase book, just like last year, with some details about the ranking, some analysis, sort of magazine-like publication about what's going on. We're planning, of course, lots of media exposure. Last year, we're particularly successful in Indonesia with media exposure, and we're hoping to replicate that in other markets, and also possibly media partnerships. That's an ongoing process, but we want to use this ranking to focus attention on private universities in the Asia Pacific region. And so, of course, we're very keen to work with media. Now, an institution gets a lot of promotional materials. It gets some kind of badge. This is for one of our ratings. I apologize, I didn't have the slide for the ranking one. There is an official ranking one as well. Your institution gets a certificate, which is fully signed, a ranking report where you see all sorts of benchmarking information. There's, of course, information on our website about the ranking, AppliedHE.com. There's news releases, which we spread out through Google News, and all of those things. Now, another thing I'd like to mention is a little bit about our data sharing policy. So we think it's very important to be transparent about these evaluations. And we think that benefits you more as an institution. We think it also builds more credibility because AppliedHE is relatively new. I think it's good that we are very open about what we do. It's often said that data is the new gold. So actually, all the data that we collect, we also share back with you. So all the raw survey results in anonymized form, we will send back to you in an Excel sheet. So your internal analysis team can do more analysis on our student satisfaction survey if they would like to. And we also give you all the raw data that we've used for from Google Scholars. So we mine that data from Google Scholars, which is a bit of a technical process, and we provide you with the extended spreadsheet where you can analyze exactly which authors, which publications, how many citations, etc. they've received, which is something that your internal planning or science team, whatnot, can also refer to if they're trying to measure their own performance. So I just wanted to state that basically you give us data, but we give you a lot of data back as well. And we think that kind of quid pro quo is very fair and appropriate in doing this kind of ranking process. Now I want to touch briefly also on our ratings, because there's sometimes a bit of confusion between rankings and ratings, but there's also a lot of similarity between them. So our university rankings for ASEAN or Asia Pacific essentially measure an institution's global standing, whereas our ratings are really focused on local stakeholders. So I think it's very important to make that distinction, that they measure two different things. There's two different methods: global standing versus perception by local stakeholders. So the private university rankings and the ratings look at more or less similar criteria. And you could say, well, this is maybe the philosophy or the DNA of AppliedHE. We look at teaching and learning, we look at employability, research, community engagement, internationalization, and institutional reputation. However, for our job ready rating, we look at these things in much, much more depth. So it's a much more thorough instrument. In the ranking, we only kind of scratch the surface. So the job ready rating system is basically intended to give you as an institution and also the stakeholders a 360-degree perspective on learning and employability by basically asking students, faculty, alumni, and employers about your institution. So for our ranking, we only do a student survey, and a relatively small one at that. For the job ready rating, we have a much more detailed student survey and a faculty survey and an alumni survey and an employer survey to really give you that all-round perspective. Now, the job ready rating, we believe it's highly relevant, highly versatile, and highly interdisciplinary. It's relevant because it focuses on careers, learning, community, and industry collaboration. It's versatile because it can be used for vocational diploma to postgraduate degree granting institutions. So if you're not a private university, you can still do the job ready rating. You don't have to be a private university. And it's interdisciplinary because we evaluate you by employment cluster. And the reason for that is that students tend to think very much about employment clusters as well. So the rating, as you can see, is much more all round. It looks at outcomes, it looks at delivery, and it also looks at quality of the institution. If your institution follows some kind of quality management framework, such as EFQM, it's very compatible. The structure is very similar. You'll recognize a lot of direction, execution results in the way that we do our AppliedHE job ready rating. It's also SDG compatible. Many of the survey results we collect, you can also map to these 6 SDGs, which I think are the 6 most relevant SDGs for higher education institutions. And we also focus on stakeholders. So we provide you with a stakeholder perception index. So you can basically see how the brand value of your institution is performing against the different stakeholders. So this all part of the rating and not the rankings. For the ratings, again, we focus heavily on these stakeholder surveys because that's I think a very valid approach because your stakeholders often really know what's going on. These are the employment clusters. There are 22. So basically, it covers the entire spectrum of higher education, and it mainly serves as a communication tool to let you communicate the areas in which your institution is particularly strong. So job ready, again, we see there's an employability crisis. So it helps. There's many universities that offer degrees, but not any degree guarantees you a job. We think it's a very comprehensive evaluation that you get a lot of stakeholder insight. And especially if you're not an institution that is very research heavy, but you're more focused on training skills and employability, we think the job ready rating is basically the best and the only kind of international rating solution for you. But back to the ranking, and I just want to mention that if you're interested in doing the job ready rating, we can use the job ready rating data in our ranking. So this is why I bring that up now. So if that's something that you're considering, please reach out to us. We're happy to discuss that with you. But of course, you can also just start with the ranking and do the job ready rating another time. These are just some basic points, but I think especially if you are the person who has to convince your management that doing the AppliedHE private university ranking is the right way to go. Well, why we think you should join. I mean, number one, we think the criteria are very relevant, and also the weighting. It fits very strongly private universities who are really focused on teaching and learning most of the time and employability. At the same time, we do include research, but in a very broad sense by leveraging Google Scholar, that huge database. It's a useful tool for peer benchmarking. There isn't much in terms of private universities. They don't really fit the big international rankings. So it's quite novel. So for, I think, about 50-60% of institutions that we've ranked, this was the first time they received any data like this for international benchmarking. So very exciting for them, very useful. The saying often goes, if you're ranked, you exist. Getting on the list is more important than exactly where you stand on the list. And I think especially if you do a ranking the first time, it's okay if you're not immediately at the top or maybe a little bit lower rung. You will improve as you get used to this process. And also it depends a bit on context, right? I mean, if you are a private university in a country or a situation with far fewer resources, then maybe a slightly lower ranking tier is still something to really celebrate and shout about because you're there, right? You have been evaluated. So we don't want to present rankings as a zero-sum game. Yes, of course we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but there's a lot in terms of sub-rankings as well. We don't just look at one ranking criterion there. So if you frame your ranking performance well, we think there's always something to shout about to make your alumni proud, your funders proud, your students proud, and so on. And finally, there is no charge to participate in the private university rankings by AppliedHE. So if that was a consideration, then that shouldn't stop you. Now, just as we are looking forward to providing you with this service, essentially free of charge, we also want your support. So especially the student surveys, we currently have them in Chinese, English, Indonesian, Khmer, Russian, Thai, and Vietnamese, although some of these translations are slightly old. So if you're going to use them, please check them. But we would like to add more languages. So if you would like your survey translation, let's say in Arabic or Farsi or another language, Japanese, Korean, please reach out to us. We can provide you with our survey backend. The survey is not very long. It's about 20 questions. And if you can then help us translate into your language, then we can send it out to students, and students can answer in the language that they are familiar with, and that should also help with your response rate. So if you're worried about English, that should not be a barrier for participation. And the same is true for the alumni survey, if you need to use that. Now, in terms of outreach, I think the AppliedHE private university ranking, because it's fairly new, it's not as well known as we would like yet. So please forward this information to colleagues. I'm sure you're members of an association or a network in your country. If you think they're interested colleagues, please let them know. We really appreciate that support. Similarly, if you have an idea for local media outreach, we're very keen to listen. We can maybe do some kind of exclusive pre-release or make ourselves or ranking advisory board members available to your media partners so that we can really pump this up in your country or in your market. Similarly, if you have questions about the ranking or suggestions, please let us know as well. We may not immediately be able to implement it, but we're fairly small, a very nimble organization. So if you face a problem, I'm quite confident that we can solve it. And finally, if you have budget for sponsorships or to do the job ready rating, we do offer sponsorships. They have no effect on your ranking outcome, but they exist. Please contact us as well, because yes, it helps to pay for the project, and it gives you some nice PR as the ranking results are presented, right? Because your sponsorship, your name is even more strongly emphasized. Now I leave you with this: appliedhe.org/private ranking 2023. So this is the website where you can find all the information. You can find the brochure, you can find the checklist, what you have to submit. You can find the register now button where you can start submitting the information to us. First, you need to submit your email address, and then once we've checked your submission, we will send you the link. If you have any questions, please write to ranking@appliedhe.org, and then we will hopefully get back to you quickly. Keep in mind that sometimes it takes us 1 or 2 days to get back. So I will leave my presentation here. While I was talking, I wasn't able to see any of the Q&A or the chat. Okay, and I see there are no Q&A or chat questions at this time. So yes, I'm now very open to any questions you may have. Any details, yeah, please go ahead. So there is this raise hand button, which I'm pressing now. I'm raising my own hand. You may feel free to do that as well. You can also type a question in the chat. Okay, I see here that Bashir Ahmed Bouyan has raised his hand. I'm going to allow you to talk, Bashir, and then you can ask your question. Go ahead. Hi, Bashir. No.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you, please.
For your nice presentation regarding the university ranking. May I know that because today your presentation you have made, can we get the slides of this presentation?
Yes, the slides will be uploaded onto appliedhe.org in a little while, and you will also get an email after this with a link to the YouTube recording and then the slides. But I think the website itself is more detailed, actually, than what I presented.
And another issue that you have said regarding the peer evaluation regarding the institution, how to make the peer evaluation in the...
Sorry, the peer evaluation, you mean?
Yes, in the ranking.
Yeah. What we will do is we will send a list of all the participating universities to all
Yes,
the other participating universities,
yes.
and they can then nominate up to 10 institutions. That's as simple as the system is. So it's basically to see how well known a university is among its peers in the region, both locally.
For example, we are leading university in Bangladesh.
Yes.
For example, in Bangladesh, there are 60 private universities.
Yes.
It is, for example. So we have nominated some of the universities. You can collect the data from them regarding our reputation, like that?
No. Okay, well, if those 60 universities participate, so let's say we have 200 universities participate, right?
Yeah,
In the whole ranking.
In the ranking.
Then you will get a message from us,
yes.
Asking you to nominate 10 of those 200 universities.
Those who have applied for ranking.
Yes, only those that have applied for ranking.
From them, we will nominate the 10 universities.
Correct.
So what they will do, that 10 universities that will be selected by us?
Well, we will compile basically the university that has the most nominations or the most votes, and they will get some more points. So you can submit up to 5 from Bangladesh, and you should submit 5 from another country.
Okay. Again, the 5 from Bangladesh and 5 from outside of the Bangladesh, from the other countries.
Yeah,
might
if they are participating.
Asia Pacific, maybe. Yeah. So that 10 universities, there is the EP nominate. What will be the functions of that 10 universities regarding our evaluation?
I mean, it's just like a kind of like a vote or a popularity contest, if you want to call it that, right? You simply vote for the institutions of the 200, the 10 that you regard highly, and we just record. So if 50 universities vote for one institution or are amongst the nominated, then that institution gets 50 points.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very simple.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, then I will now move to Suresh Ponan, who's raised his hand or her hand. Go ahead, Suresh.
Hello, Peter Steck.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, very good.
Yeah, myself, Dr. Suresh Ponan from Weltech University, India.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And very nice presentation you have given and very useful information you have shared. I have one query. How you are categorizing the teaching and evaluation process? Because all the universities are private universities. They are following their own style of teaching and learning methods.
Yeah, that's true. So if you basically, we evaluated 35% of it, or most of it is evaluated with our student survey, right?
Yes.
So we have a fairly straightforward student survey. You can do the demo on our website, just so that you see what your students see. And we basically ask satisfaction with faculty and the learning process, satisfaction with examination, and satisfaction with facilities. So it's a very straightforward question, and we also ask a little bit about students' participation in what do you call it, environmental or social outreach activities.
Okay.
And that's it. So it's an online survey, and I suspect it's questions you probably already ask in your own surveys, and we can share with you the anonymized survey data after we've completed the survey, so that you can use it for your own process as well.
Thank you so much. If you share, it will be helpful for all the universities.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and of course you can benchmark it, right? We will give you benchmarking data. Yeah.
Yes, and another one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have listed that internationalization is held at 10%.
Yes.
Yes. And what are the categories you are considering in that internationalization?
Well, internationalization, we basically consider international faculty and international students on campus, but our definition is quite broad. So for international students, it includes also exchange students. And for faculty, it also includes faculty who have studied abroad.
Okay.
So it's not just foreign citizens. So it's a little bit wider definition. And yeah, you submit that data to us, and then if you do get called in for the audit, I mean, if we do select you, we would ask for some more detail. Okay, could you give us a faculty list and indicate which one studied abroad or something like that?
Okay.
If that is how it goes.
Whether it includes both incoming as well as outgoing?
Yes.
Student exit. Okay.
Yes, but please read the methodology carefully for the wording.
Yes.
So I don't put you on the wrong leg here.
Yeah.
But there is a PDF, you can print it out, highlight it, and the definition should be quite clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? All right, do I have a Q&A? Yes, I have a Q&A. Great. Armin Sargassian, hi, thank you for the very presentation. How can we register the institution? Okay, and you're a state institution in Armenia. Okay, I'm very sorry for this, Armin. We don't currently rank state institutions. This might happen in future, but right now we're looking at private universities. Yeah, that's my answer. But we are very interested in Armenia and in discussing with new countries and new regions. So for this private university ranking, unfortunately, your institution cannot participate, but you can do the job ready rating. So perhaps if you'd like, you can drop us a line, and also people from our sales team can perhaps follow up with you to just learn a bit more about your needs, your interests. But right now you cannot participate in the ranking as it's only open to private universities. So I'm very sorry about that. And thank you so much for your interest. Do I have any other questions at this time or in chat? Let me open chat. Okay, then I've done a fantastic job at explaining myself. Or everybody fell asleep. Oh, I have another in the Q&A coming in. Great. Irene Hong, the MOE of Taiwan asks universities to track alumni after 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years of their graduation, and then publish an official report in Mandarin. Should we translate the official report into English? No. You don't have to translate the whole report in English. We accept the report in your local language. It's tremendously helpful if it can be something that can be auto-translated, so we have an idea of what you submitted. But especially if you can submit to us what you have officially submitted to the government, that would be great, because then we can cross-compare. For our ranking, we only look at the 6 months, so that would be the 1 year outcome. That would be the closest we would be looking at that. So that's the data you submit. But thank you for that question. You can submit documents in your local, your national language as you submit them to the government, and we will take it from there. But if you have them in English, fantastic, right? It makes our life easy. Or you have both, you can submit both. But national language is fine. All right. Thank you, Irene Hong, for that. Any further questions at this time? If not, then what I'm going to suggest is, yeah, that we slowly wrap up. Thank you very much for your participation. If you have any questions, of course, you know how to reach us. And also, we hope the website helps out with that. Yeah, then I think I will close the session. Thank you very much. We look forward to receiving your submissions. And yeah, see you in 2023 for a very exciting launch and so on. Have a very good day. Have a very good afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, Kevin. Thank you for coming in.